3 weeks ago, Trump triggered the global community with his proposal that America take control of Gaza. Today, tensions flared again when he posted an AI video of Trump Gaza. It depicted a Trump tower, bearded ladies on a beach, and Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu having drinks on a beach in Gaza. Now, some people are even more outraged and confused and wondering, is Trump trolling or serious? Well, by the end of this video, I think you'll be surprised. This video will give you a high-level overview of, first, what Trump actually proposed. Second, the reactions that it elicited from various countries. And third, my opinion on what Trump is trying to do. And here's a teaser. I think Trump is bluffing. Before I dive in, it's important to say this. What's going on in Gaza is perhaps the most painful, emotionally charged, and complicated issues on the planet. So before I get into any of the logic, here's some perspective on how various communities are feeling. First, the Palestinian side. Many pro-Palestine advocates feel shocked, betrayed, and fear American colonialism in Gaza. They fear that Palestinians will be uprooted from what they consider their home. They feel unseen, unheard, unsafe, and that their pain is unacknowledged, and that their right to self-determination is being undermined. And with that context, I get why many of Trump's supporters found the AI video funny, and his humor is a big part of his appeal to many people. But for people in pain, especially those tied to Palestine or who have lost loved ones, it's not amusing. It's alienating. People in fear don't find this funny. And some of those people are Arabs who voted for Trump. Now I'll circle back on this AI video later. But for now, let's continue. On the Israeli side, many pro-Israeli advocates also feel concerned and unsafe. They view Hamas as an existential threat that must be removed in order for them to have peace and safety. They feel that they've been subjected to attacks since the founding of Israel. And many Jewish people in America and Israel feel like the whole world is against them. In America, opinions are divided. Some Americans staunchly support Israel and consider that support crucial to defending America from jihadists. Others view Israel's military action in Gaza as costing innocent lives, and America being complicit in that. This is also tricky for me to discuss personally. I have close friends who are Arab, Palestinian, and Jewish. I've had in-depth conversations with many of them about this, and even went to Shabbat events these past 2 weeks. So with all that said, I'm making this video in the hopes that it helps you clarify how to think about Trump's actions, not necessarily what to think. And I hope that you walk away from this video feeling calmer and thinking clearer. Let's dive right in. First, here's what Trump said. On February 4th, during a White House press conference with Netanyahu, Trump said, quote, "The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site." He also said that it has the potential to be rebuilt into the Riviera of the Middle East. In a separate statement, he said of the Palestinian people, they're going to have peace. They're not going to be shot at and killed and destroyed like the civilization of wonderful people has had to endure. They instead can occupy all of the beautiful area with homes and safety, and they can live out their lives in peace and harmony instead of having to go back and do it again. He suggested that Palestinians be relocated somewhere else, like Egypt or Jordan. But the next day, Trump's press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, walked back this statement, saying that instead they should be temporarily relocated for the rebuilding process. So now that you know what Trump said, here's how various factions reacted. On Israel's side, Netanyahu said, "It's a remarkable idea and I think it should be really pursued." Now let's talk about the Palestinian response. Palestine is split. There's the Palestinian National Authority who runs the West Bank, and Hamas rules Gaza. Both reject displacement, Hamas more aggressively. But also note that governments don't fully reflect the will of the people. So we don't know how accurately they reflect the will of the Palestinian people. Egypt, which already has 41,000 registered Palestinian refugees, and Jordan, which has 2 million, both rejected Trump's assertion. The U.S. response is mixed, with Democrats generally opposing it and Republicans, or at least some Republicans, supporting it. Americans who remember the massive toll of Iraq and Afghanistan are a majority against any kind of occupation action in the Middle East. In the broader international community, Trump's proposal is unpopular, with the UN and European Union both expressing strong disapproval. But for now, let's analyze the best arguments for and against Trump's proposal, assuming that he did follow through. Supporters argue that the current situation in Gaza is unsustainable. With Gaza in ruins and no clear path to peace, they see Trump's proposal as a bold move to break the deadlock. They point to his past successes, such as the Abraham Accords, which was a Middle Eastern peace deal that normalized relations between Israelis and several Arab states, as evidence of his ability to achieve results where others have failed. They believe that U.S. oversight could bring stability, security, and much-needed reconstruction funds to Gaza, potentially turning it into a model of prosperity in the region. On the other hand, critics argue that this is just a recipe for disaster. They believe that relocating millions of people is not only logistically impossible, but also a moral travesty. They fear that it would only increase the hostility of the Palestinian people, radicalize them, and increase support for Hamas. And personally, I agree with the critics that this should be a last resort and avoided at all costs, because we have a terrible track record of military interventions in the Middle East. And not only would it be expensive to reconstruct Gaza, it's hard to imagine that America doing this unilaterally would lead to Palestinians leaving peacefully. So it would necessitate force, which is costly, deadly, and questionable morally. It might create temporary safety for Israel from Hamas, which is great, but at the cost of creating even more hostility toward both Israel and America in the region more broadly. But here's the thing. I think this is a bluff. I suspect that this proposal is more of a negotiating tactic than a genuine plan to occupy Gaza. And to understand that, let's look at what Trump has done in the Middle East historically and what he's done more broadly. Trump has a history of making provocative statements to shake up negotiations and force movement from other parties. In fact, he just recently did this 2 weeks ago to pressure Hamas into giving up some of their Israeli hostages. He threatened that if they did not, all hell would break out. And Hamas did give up some hostages, with another hostage exchange being agreed upon just last night. He's employed similar tactics with success in other parts of the world too. In 2018, he threatened to withdraw the US from NATO unless member states increased their defense spending. And by 2022, the number of NATO nations spending their required share went from 3 to 11. And do you remember his beef with North Korea's Kim Jong-un? With Kim, Trump weaved in humor and alternated between threats and deadly banter. In 2017, he said, quote, "North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen." Months later, he said of Kim, "I too have a nuclear button, but it is a much bigger and more powerful one than his. And my button works." He also said, "Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime." Okay, it's kind of terrifying, but also funny. So what was the result? Kim dismantled a launching station in July 2018. And by September of the same year, Trump was saying of Kim, "He wrote me beautiful letters, and they're great letters. We fell in love." 9 months after that, he became the first sitting US president to ever cross into the North Korea territory within the demilitarized zone. And he did so during a meeting with Kim Jong-un. Now, it's worth noting that by October 2019, talks did break down and North Korea resumed missile testing. But this, plus his success with NATO, shows that Trump has a history of using a combination of humor, threats, and what may be bluffs in order to get what he wants. And his moves might have already galvanized Arab states into taking a more active hand in resolving Gaza. The Arab League convened an emergency summit on February 24th this year, after Trump's proposal. And at that summit, Arab leaders not only discussed the situation in Gaza, they also pledged $20 billion for reconstruction. And that $20 billion pledge is evidence that Trump's pressure might already be paying off. And we should also keep in mind that Trump has tried to push for a two-state solution before. During his first term, he tried to push for a two-state solution that he called the deal of the century, which would have established an independent state of Palestine, with Palestinians occupying 70% of the West Bank and all of Gaza, on the condition that they demilitarize, disarm Hamas, and recognize Israel as a Jewish state. Palestinian leaders did reject that plan for several reasons. But despite the failure of the original plan, it reveals something about Trump's potential intentions. So here's my perspective. Considering the people supporting Trump, it would be political suicide for Trump not to support Israel's action against Hamas. But the killing needs to stop. Hamas's explicit goal is to eradicate the state of Israel. So no two-state solution is possible with Hamas in charge, which means that if Hamas and Israel are left to their own devices, the killing will continue. But the US is not a trusted party among much of the Arab world. So any deal that doesn't have heavy Palestinian and Arab involvement won't be accepted by either the Palestinians or the Arabs. That means that in order to push the Arab states to get more involved, something drastic needed to be signaled. And by signaling a US takeover of Gaza, Trump is getting the Arab states more involved. If there is to be any peaceful solution, Arab states need to help remove Hamas's influence in Palestine. And Trump's actions are forcing that to happen. So, my read is that this is a gambit, and the mixture of threats, grand proclamations, and humor are all part of that. Now, as with all gambits, there is risk. And if Arab states do not step up, Trump might choose to follow through on his proposal, which could have disastrous consequences for everyone. Now, you might not like Trump's methods, and you also might think that I'm engaging in wishful thinking or biased. But two things are clear. One, the status quo is untenable, and some form of radical change is necessary to break the cycle of violence and suffering. And two, after Trump's actions, Arab nations got more involved. Now to circle back, while the AI video's humor lands for some, it's a misstep for a president. And I'd love to see more discernment from Trump here, alongside the strategy we have unpacked, because ultimately, Trump is a leader. And as a leader whose citizens are in genuine pain, many of them refugees from Palestine or who have lost family members due to this conflict, I'd like to see our president demonstrate more of the grace and emotional intelligence that many of us have seen he's capable of, and not post videos like this that simply alienate millions of people, many of whom are Arabs that voted for him. It doesn't advance what I hope his strategy is, and it just burns trust with many Americans. So, tell me what you think. Is Trump's gambit genius or reckless? Drop me a comment letting me know your opinion. And if you found this video informative, please consider becoming a YouTube member, X subscriber, or Instagram subscriber. And in doing so, you'll get access to exclusive perks, like the ability to ask me questions directly that I'll answer in my regular AMA live streams, as well as other goodies. And I have an AMA coming up this Friday at noon Pacific, so you can ask me about this specific video there. And your support helps me continue to bring you these in-depth analyses. So, thanks for watching. And let's stay curious, let's value nuance, and as always, seek the truth.